With the recent release of Black Myth Wukong, I knew straight away that I would have to attempt a solid versus comparison between my Warframe main Wukong and his Black Myth counterpart. This is a case where things can get extremely nitpicky, convoluted, and maybe frustrating for fans of either game, as we are not only having to pick between two renditions of the same character, but also pick out certain pieces of lore from the original version of Wukong from Journey to the West to see what feats and abilities can be applied to one or even both of the characters. On one hand, we have the 10.0 Warframe Wukong with a large amount of capabilities due to not only being a 10.0 Warframe, but also being based on the Monkey King himself, possessing some of his most overpowered abilities. And then we have the Chosen One from Black Myth, the silent protagonist Monkey King who rises up to essentially be Wukong's replacement in Black Myth after he is sealed away, learning and achieving his abilities in similar ways. Now, of course, with both being based on Wukong, we have to know what abilities of either his renditions possess and what that means for the fight in game and in lore. And this topic is where shit kinda gets a bit annoying. On one hand, Warframe is a power fantasy experience where once you've modded yourself well and min-maxed your setup, nothing in the game or world would stand a chance against you. Warframes are not only overpowered in lore and would stomp 95% of other video games and media universes, but some in-game features are also considered to be used in lore, such as the modding system itself. By implying that the modding system is also used in lore also means that Warframe's version of Wukong, his damage numbers and health values are also lore accurate, but this would be dependent on the build he's using. And of course there's a lot of ways to mod and build, and the same thing goes for Black Myth Wukong. And meanwhile, in Black Myth, a fully leveled player with the best gear and skills with the mechanics available can easily dismantle every boss in the game without even being hit. So if we are to consider in-game mechanics and lore, this fight starts to get more interesting. Black Myth Wukong may not be a 100% retelling of the story itself, the Journey to the West, but it's about as close as we can get to a retelling within the game format, at least compared to other video games right now. And considering we play as the Chosen One, it is also fair to assume we could never achieve the level of power the original Wukong this is based on, actual power level, and neither could the Warframe. Buddha tends to be the only character that can really best him within most media. But Warframe does not currently have any lore or lore accurate feats that would imply that the Warframe version of this character is actually based on the Journey to the West version. So it's kind of hard to tell whether the Warframe would actually be the equivalent of either the Chosen One or the actual Wukong from the Warframe universe. Or who knows, maybe the actual Wukong of the Warframe universe is just the Warframe. So yeah, Black Myth's Chosen One does compare way closer, and we have more lore to go off of purely because of how it blends with the Journey to the West. For example, Sun Wukong possesses the ability of 72 total transformations and can also transform into a version of himself equally as powerful as his opponent should the occasion call for it. And in total, these transformations actually grant him 72 lives, and that's before his 7 layers of immortality. Black Myth's Chosen One has an in-game access of up to 54 spirits and 10 transformations, and this is of course before DLC if those are to bolster this number up. If we're trying to be lore accurate outside of gameplay, I would assume the spirits are in line with the transformations and how many lives he has, and that would leave him with 64 lives at least. So for now, I'd grant lore accurate maxed out Chosen One with 64 lives as opposed to 72, and I will not be including Enlightenment in this equation because that would make the fight pointless. Warframe's Wukong would not be able to take an Enlightened Wukong, Chosen One or not. And I want this video to actually be interesting and worth speaking on. Now that we have established some of the lore and scaling, I want to cover both the in-game and lore-based points for each character and give a point to either side based on who does it better. And here are the categories we'll be giving the points through. We'll be comparing their iron staffs, their scaling damage and HP values, their feats based off of story and lore, their abilities, their weaponry, their movement, and their immortality, starting with the iron staff category. As for the Warframe, Wukong's iron staff is made of both iron and assumedly energy, considering its appearance. It can grow in length and width. Its stance, Primal Fury, has 3 main combos. They include both ranged attacks and repeated slams. These may seem pointless to mention when compared to the stances from Black Myth Wukong, but where the Warframe's version of the weapon shines is in its damage and its scaling. The scaling we speak of also ties into the next category when talking about health values and such, but I feel it's also worth mentioning due to the uses of mods within the Warframe's lore. Of course, it is possible to hit in the tens of millions with this staff, and even without a maxed out modded setup can hit for far higher number values than that of a maxed out Black Myth Wukong staff setup. With that being said, he also has to land said attack, which is another topic we'll be covering more so in the movement section. Black Myth's Chosen One, on the other hand, has access to multiple stances, granting him much more versatility in terms of combos and melee attacks. Smash stance allowing for mobile slam attacks and high DPS, pillar stance for evasive maneuvers, and thrust stance for longer range rapid attacks. In terms of in-game damage, the Chosen One's heavy slams can be seen hitting for upwards of 15,000. The reality is that both Wukong attacks from either games have access to damage that far surpasses the full average HP value of the other, basically making this a guaranteed one hit on health straight to the spare lives, depleting a layer of immortality if a high crit damage attack is landed. If you're curious on the numbers, the Chosen One has access to up to 905 health, while the average Warframe Wukong build would probably have around 1600 health. And that is also not getting into the Warframe's armor values and how much that reduces damage. But yes, the Warframes can have way more HP total than Black Myths, purely based on in-game mechanics. And that would also include stuff like rolling guard for iframes and invincibility. Giving a point to either is tricky for me here. On one hand, the versatility in stances could give Black Myth the advantage, but the topic of damage numbers does have a caveat. The Chosen One can only hit for tens of thousands of HP if landing a fully charged up heavy attack, meaning that getting through the Warframe's HP may take a little longer via the rapid combinations. As for the Warframe, to land a single hit to get through one of the lives in a single swing would be a challenge, due to the Chosen One's dodging mechanic, which we'll go over in the movement section. And I also think that the Primal Fury stance with its fast combos, massive damage, vacuum slam attack combo where it pulls enemies in, and rapid slam attack combos in which the staff increases in width and becomes a massive tube would 100% present a challenge to Black Myth Wukong stances. And of course the energy that this staff is made of isn't covered in the Warframe's lore anywhere, and we don't know how truly powerful it actually is. I know some of you may disagree here, but I'm actually going to give the point to the Warframe. I just think that he would actually have an easier time landing attacks due to the speed of his combos and the fact that every attack he swings would sweep one of the Chosen One's lives away if landed, whilst the Chosen One may have to land multiple hits to deplete the Warframe's higher HP values in order to charge up a heavy attack for one big swing. Not to mention that also both of these characters can deflect both melee and projectiles with their staffs. The Warframes can block bullets, and I know there's no bullets in Black Myth, but there are projectiles that come at you very quickly, and you can not only block them with abilities, but you can also dodge them. This category was very close, but I will give it to the Warframe based off of its speed and damage. This next round is going to be a bit more simple. We're going over the scaling, damage and HP values of both characters when looking at their in-game mechanics, and of course we have to consider these purely because of the fact that the Warframe does make use of in-game mechanics within the lore, so just using that information for one side is a little bit unfair. Black Myth's Chosen One has up to 905 HP tops, and the Warframe will have on average around 1600 HP, but it also depends on the build, considering you can use something like Arcane Blessing to make this value way higher. I don't know, I just think this fight is way more fun when we actually consider in-game values, because without it, it's kind of hard to judge exactly what kind of damage Black Myth Wukong could take if he doesn't possess a health value, when Warframes in their lore do in fact use mechanics such as shields, armor, health, shield gating, iframes, stuff like that. And to be fair, I think some of the combo attacks that the Chosen One has access to would make this HP difference not too important during a fight, but at the end of the day the values are higher for the Warframe, so the Warframe does take this round. And before you think this is going to turn into some Warframe glazing session, just you wait until we get into these next categories. And our next category is feats based off of story and lore. This immediately goes to Black Myth's Chosen One. Even if Warframe had given us some of their Wukong lore, I doubt the feats would probably even hold up to Black Myth. The fact that the whole story of Black Myth is mostly a retelling of the Journey to the West pretty much immediately puts Black Myth's feats at the highest level. Going through the entire game fighting against legendary boss after boss, constantly upgrading to become the original Wukong's replacement, Warframe can't compete in this department simply due to the lack of Wukong specific lore. While Black Myth does a good job of adapting the feats and power displayed in Journey to the West, Warframe makes no case for their Wukong being remotely related to said story, thus Black Myth takes this round easily. The next section is abilities, and this section the point goes straight to the Chosen One. The excessive amount of abilities, including the Immobilize spell, self-healing, damage negation, invisibility, damage buffing, duplication and more. The clone abilities alone outweigh the Warframe's clone by sheer numbers, and most of the abilities could act as a direct counter to the Warframe's attacks, Rock Solid being a good example. And Somersault Cloud is also there to directly compete with the Warframe's Cloud Walker, and this isn't including the variety of effects and attacks from his transformations. As for what the Warframe has to offer, 4 abilities total and his passive, which ties into the Immortality section, so we'll revisit this later. Access to his equal clone that can do everything he does, including share weaponry and use his other abilities, self-healing for him and his clone whilst being immortal during Cloudwalker, temporary invincibility and armor buffing from Defy, and of course his very potent rendition of the Iron Staff and its stance Primal Fury. He can also go invisible or invulnerable for 30 seconds when one of his layers of immortality from his passive is consumed, and of course his ability to transform into his Tenno form and use the powers and layers of immortality the Tenno possess whenever he wants is also a good point to make. However, Black Myth just has access to such a wide range of attacks and abilities that I can't see a way for the Warframe to not get hard countered by most of his attacks. Another point to Black Myth due to his sheer amount of versatility in this section. Next up we have the weaponry section. All Warframe players can rejoice at the category most easily stomped in this equation. I say that the amount of weaponry the Warframes have access to is actually the biggest strength they have in this matchup, simply because of how broken the arsenal is in Warframe. Whilst I think having access to many guns may not have an effect on the Chosen One, especially due to both of these characters sharing the ability to deflect projectiles with their staffs, I do however think some of the more dangerous weapons and explosives could prove useful, and the endless amount of melee options leave more room for different stances and combos to be utilised against the Black Myth Iron Staff, from heavy blades, scythes, daggers, nunchucks, gun blades and even chainsaws, and shooting rocket launchers and energy beams at the Chosen One could help make the fight more competitive. The most access Black Myth has to other weapon types is mostly through the transformations, with of course a couple of exceptions within the weaponry. However, the firepower here is just unmatched. The Warframe takes this point. And now we're going on to movement, which may be the most complicated category to judge. On one hand we have the insane parkour and attack speed combined with the nippy Cloudwalker from the Warframe, as well as the insane distance coverage from the Tenno Sling, and in Black Myth's case we have less parkour and what gameplay would show to be slower movement, yet still has its own form of aerial movement with the Cloudwalker counterpart. But where the Chosen One truly shines is in his movement with dodging, the ability to dodge any attack in the game, projectile or not, simply by dodging at the correct time. And if we were to assume the power or lore accuracy, I can't imagine him ever missing a dodge. The animation itself upon a perfect dodge almost implies that the enemy's attack is so slow in comparison to him that he is always 10 steps ahead. In Warframe, even the best parkour can still result in you taking damage from stray bullets, but I'd argue that Black Myth's dodging is where the Chosen One's true immortality lies. This round goes to Black Myth. And finally we must score the Immortality category. So here we're comparing the layers of immortality both of them possess. As we've clearly already established, the Chosen One should have access to 7 layers of immortality and 64 lives due to the amount of transformations available, and Black Myth's ties of story to the Journey to the West. He also has access to his life-saving Strand ability, granting him extra lives when charged up and used, so he's pretty kitted in this department, especially from a numbers standpoint. As for the Warframe however, this is where the line between lives and immortality gets a bit strange. We have to address the power level of the Tenno, as this isn't just any version of Wukong, it's a whole ass Warframe. The Warframe / Tenno are infested into indestructible steel, and due to the gift from the Void and transference, it renders the Tenno impenetrable to physical and cosmic attacks. The Tenno can simply retransfer and send out their Warframe again if it perishes in combat. In game, the Warframes have multiple lives that can be increased with arcanes, and this isn't including Wukong's abilities yet, let alone the fact that the Warframes are said to be immortals in the lore and are severely underplayed in gameplay surprisingly. Wukong of course has access to the invulnerability phase of Defy and protection in Cloudwalker, 3 layers of invulnerability and a 30-second bonus of invulnerability if one of those layers is depleted. If these layers are broken though, you would have to go through his spare lives and a constant revival of the Warframe via the Tenno's transference. When we went over this in the Doomslayer vs Rhino video, and how this amount of immortality and bullshit may not even render them impossible to defeat in combat, but rather impossible to kill forever as they just keep coming back. The scaling, feats, movement, abilities and lives that the Chosen One has access to, I can see the Warframe frequently outclassed in combat only to keep trying and trying again. And Black Myth being an adaptation of the Journey to the West would imply that Buddha would be the only one who poses a true threat to Wukong's potential. It's difficult to make true sense of a fight like this when combining both lore and gameplay, when Warframes use a larger amount of its broken in-game mechanics within the lore, whilst Black Myth would imply that your in-game power is subdued to make the gameplay more rewarding and challenging. And I simply can't budge the fact that Black Myth takes form as such a powerful and lore-filled version of the character who would slaughter all of fiction with ease versus the power creep of Warframe's rendition, who lacks in any specific feats and lore to prove he has achieved the same levels of power implied from the Journey to the West. And for that reason, the final point does go to Black Myth. So that leaves us with a score of 4-3 in favour of Black Myth's Destined one. In reality, if we were to take away the in-game mechanics and how they are supposed to interact with the lore of Warframe, this wouldn't have even been a close matchup, and honestly would have been boring to make. And the fact that the story is based on the Journey to the West also gives them a huge advantage. There was just no way the Warframe was going to win this matchup, and that says a lot because Warframes are insanely powerful compared to a lot of games out there. The fact that it took someone like the Doomslayer to give them a remotely close matchup on this channel. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that Black Myth would easily stomp, despite the fact that our scoring system did give the Warframe a decent chance. Let me know if you guys agree in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video and subscribe. All my links will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video and nerding out with me for 15 minutes. Appreciate you all very much, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.